this if you
There we go.
gotta show your
Yeah, because these guys all have the busiest summer schedules in the history of high school basketball players, at least from what I'm seeing. We'll see. Will's probably playing video games in the background of his computer at the moment. It's not really that busy.
No, we'll study. We'll study.
I'm here. I'm here.
We want to give him one or two more minutes?
One more minute.
Okay.
Yeah, not in a huge rush. I'll do a quick Zoom and then I'll do a quick presentation and then we'll get to Q&A. So
Sounds like a plan to me. I can give you a little thank you for being here, Coach. We do appreciate it.
Of course.
Appreciate your time. And the first year head coach.
Yeah.
That's big time. And
Not first year dealing with Riverside though.
not the first year down Riverside. That is not true. Not can't escape me. And this is what, how many years at Swarthmore?
13.
You counting as a player?
Yeah, yeah, 12 out of the last 13, eight as a coach. Yeah, it's been a while.
Maybe you can give some insight on how that landscape has changed at Swarthmore.
Hmm. All right, I'll pull up the Zoom and then we'll get to I'm sure a couple other people will feed in, but
Oh, do I gotta make you a co-host? What do I gotta do?
uh just
Oh, okay.
prove that request. There
Cool.
we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Everyone can see the screen. All right. Okay, yeah, guys. So Shane Loeffler. Yeah, Zach said it, first year head coach. I have been here 12 out of the last 13 years. I graduated 2016 as a player, and then have been associate head coach for the past 8 years. So every single question you could possibly muster about Swarthmore, I will be able to answer. So let's just get in right into it. Okay. So Swarthmore basketball. So, before I played there, I don't want to say I was the guy that turned it all around, but we were not very good. We went from before I got there as a player, 3-22. My first 2 years, 7 wins, 8 wins, then 11 wins. And then we finally struck a chord, got to the conference championship for the first time in 20 some years, and we haven't really looked back since. Yeah. So obviously, you all know that it is an exceptional academic school, but let's talk about that first. Okay, so obviously, elite liberal arts college, and we'll talk a little bit about liberal arts. But you guys being Riverside, I'm sure that you're all relatively aware of the difference between liberal arts colleges and the research universities. But the reality of what we have here, it's about 1,700 students, about 1,725. So it's a smaller school, but the campus itself is huge in relation. So we got about 425 acres of campus. And so with that, you don't feel like you're necessarily at a small college in terms of the campus. We're also really conveniently located in the fact that I think every single person on Riverside Hawks could get to campus by train. Taking the Amtrak down to Philly and then the SEPTA from Center City right to the Swarthmore train station, right to campus. So really convenient in the fact that we are right on the main line between New York City and DC. We have a guy from Hell's Kitchen who for Thanksgiving and spring break will train home, and not need a car. So it does work out well in that regard. In terms of the academics, the opportunities here are incredible because it is a smaller campus. You have incredible opportunities to actually get to know your professors and talk to them as soon as you need help. Incredible resources from an academic perspective. You also have really good research opportunities. So for a lot of our guys who have been STEM interested, we've had more and more STEM guys over the past 4 years. When they want research opportunities on campus, just because we're not a research university doesn't mean you can't get them. A lot of our guys who want to participate in research or independent study are able to do so because of that connection with their professors. As far as campus goes, we'll get into it. I don't want to beat up the pictures. Okay, it is a beautiful campus. It's hard to know until you get down there. You guys see the font on the left side of the screen? Okay. So in terms of opportunities, it's a double edge, right? So our guys get incredible opportunities from going here. It's not just because of the Swarthmore name, although that does play a role. The Swarthmore prestige, the Swarthmore reputation is phenomenal. We have, what are called SWATties, Swarthmore alums, all over the country in every field and every grad school. Everywhere you look, you're going to be able to find a SWATty. So with that, the guys who have pursued med school, law school, business school, they are getting into some of the top schools in the country. With that, though, like obviously there's work that goes into that. So what we don't beat around the bush with Swarthmore is it is academically rigorous. The academics here are challenging. We don't want to put a fuzzy coat on that for guys and have them come in and expect that it's going to be just as easy as their high school classes were, or just as easy as they think. It is going to be hard. But the reality is, what happens with our guys is as they're doing that every single day academically on the court, within their campus community, when you are being pushed outside of your comfort zone, you just naturally build up the strengths in terms of writing, speaking, presenting, in terms of leadership, in terms of obviously basketball. But you get to these incredible skill sets. And the reason our guys get these incredible opportunities is when they do go for internships, they're crushing those interviews, they're crushing those connections. When they do go for those business school applications or those med school applications, not only do they have people with incredible recommendations from people who have done it before, but they also have the work habits and the technique to actually make the most of it. Getting into the basketball. As I alluded to earlier, our program turned a corner back in 2016. Ever since then, like I said, we have not looked back. Every single year has been a step in the right direction. Now, with that, our conference is really tough. We have Johns Hopkins and us have had a pretty tough rivalry for the last decade. I think 7 of the last 8 conference championships has been us and Hopkins. There's also Franklin and Marshall, Gettysburg, Ursinus, some really good programs. So the reality is the reason why we've done so well in the national tournament when we get there is because we get to face really good teams who play a really wide variety of styles within our league, within our region. The biggest benefit of our league is actually the proximity, right? So I'm sure all of you are familiar with Coach Kuba's alma mater in the UAA, and then getting familiar with the NESCAC, right? So familiar with the other high academic leagues. The biggest advantage of the Centennial is the fact that our furthest trip in conference is 2 hours and 20 minutes. So we are playing a Wednesday, Saturday game schedule every single week of conference and pretty much for non-conference as well. And with that, the only time our guys ever have to miss class for basketball is the NCAA tournament. If we have to travel on a Thursday to get up to a Trinity or Amherst for Sweet 16, then our guys might miss class. But because it's only happening once a year, our professors are excited. They're not penalizing our guys. In terms of our values, okay, we have a lot of stuff that we talk about offensively and defensively, but a lot about what we talk about in our program is being 4D versus 2D, trying to be different from everyone else, trying to be different from every program, or trying to be different from every other student here. We want to really exceed, and we want to do everything with excellence. We also want to do it with incredible energy. So the reality is guys that come into our program, whether they're introverted or extroverted, there's no ability to be quiet within our program. There's no ability to not hold to those standards that we put upon our guys as soon as they get to campus. We are a very tight team, very tight campus, and our guys really buy into that and they get the benefits of that. Our number one recruiting rule, right, before we get to the basketball and the academics is we don't recruit jerks. We don't recruit assholes. Say we want good guys, not necessarily like good guys who have right values, who are okay with speaking their mind and talking, who are okay with being challenged, who are embracing of those types of challenges. And so when we do that, the reality of our academic situation is, as I alluded to earlier in this Zoom, it's really challenging here. But the reality is because of the resources you have on campus and because you're around 15 to 16 other guys around you who are just as driven and motivated and disciplined, you have no other choice but to find a way to get it done. because your teammates around you are going to help you. They're going to push you. They're going to hold you accountable. And we, obviously have had a lot of success, but a lot of these pictures are, a lot of the pictures are our energy, right? So, every guy that comes into our program has a role, right? Everyone's treated the same in terms of status, but everyone's got a role. So the guys who don't play any minutes, their impact on the game is just as important as the guys who are starting or scoring 15 a game. Everyone's got a role to play. Everyone's got a leadership piece to handle. And with that, that is why all of our guys graduate and are able to take on great challenges when they're done, is because we're not just treating you guys as basketball players. We are treating you guys as becoming better leaders, better thinkers, better speakers, better at everything you can do. So with that, that's a very brief. Oh, get out of the screen. As a very brief overview of Swarthmore. There's a lot that goes into our offense, our defense, the admissions process, the financial aid process. There's a lot to it. So I want to open the floor for questions for you guys. Coach, is this the first one you guys have done, or have you done a couple of these so far? He's going to get off mute any moment now.
Sorry. No, this is the first. Thank you. This is the first one we've done. This is the first one we've done, and probably only scheduled a couple of these, but definitely a lot of players in our program aspire to go to places, if not Swarthmore itself, like Swarthmore. So I know one of the questions I have is what are the type of guys you look for, and you answered that by saying you don't look for no, you don't recruit assholes. I like that over years. Yeah, you don't recruit jerks. You hear that? You don't recruit jerks. Um, I I like that one, and I want to let them answer questions, but maybe I'll give you the first one. What with that mindset of you don't recruit jerks, what are you looking for in particular when you go to events? What are you watching closely that a guy might think that you might not be watching closely?
Yeah. So there's a common trope within our league. It started to fade off because the joke gets old, but the amount of coaches who will come up and tell us that guy's really good in layup lines or in the warm up, he's a really good swatty. The reality, though, is that we are looking for guys who have an incredible motor and have incredible energy, right? And so that doesn't mean that if you are not the loudest guy on your team, you don't have a chance for our program. It's more the fact that what we look for is intentionality, right? So whether you're a guard, a wing, a forward, it doesn't really matter. How intentional are you with how you are playing the game, right? So that is transitioning from A to B quickly or transitioning quickly. We are a fast-paced team, so we don't want guys who jog up the floor up and down. We don't want guys who are sauntering on defense, sliding slowly. It doesn't mean you have to be an all-league defender. It doesn't mean you have to shoot 50% for three. The reality, though, is we look for guys who are intentional about their movements. Like, how do they set screens? How do they cut? How do they finish? Are they finishing away? Are they finishing with toughness? Are they getting their shots, getting ready? And are they defending? Are they giving effort on the defensive glass? Right? Something that we don't something that's an immediate eliminator for us is if you don't rebound and you don't play with physicality, you can't play for us. You could shoot, you'd be the best shooter in the gym and you'd be the best ball handler in the gym. If you are averse to physicality, that doesn't fit our program, right? So we want toughness, we want motor, we want intentionality. And then obviously, yeah, all of that is on top of you got to be athletic enough. You got to be able to shoot. You got to be able to have the right skill set or the right athleticism to fill that position. But at the same time, without the other pieces, it doesn't really matter how good of an athlete or how good of a shooter you are. The other stuff comes first.
You got a question, Anth?
Anthony almost had a question.
Hey, Coach, I have a question. It's Lewis Jones. Hi, Coach Loeffler. When an athlete is at the showcases and that you attend and talent evaluation, clearly that's a limited point, a limited amount of time that you have to make an evaluation. What guidance would you give a player to make the best impression in that context? What are you looking? What would be the top three or top four uh, items you'd like to see in each of those specific kinds of contexts?
Yeah, and I'll give actionable advice, right? Because I think everyone here wants to score and wants to get some steals and get some block shots. So that's the easy stuff. I think the reality is, especially early on in these camps, it doesn't really matter what station you are doing. And I don't want to sound cliche with this, right? Sometimes you get to a camp and the stations, there's no coaches on the sideline because they're still driving to the camp and it's just the coaches who are there. But the reality is, when I worked camps, when I've got my list, like I'm writing down guys that I didn't know about in stations, right? The guys who are whipping the ball, who are, again, using that intentionality of cutting or screening, the guys who are picking things up quickly, that's useful, right? And I'll use an example at Dartmouth this past weekend. Uh, there was a player I knew about, so I was watching him, but watching him in his station versus everyone else, there was a noticeable difference with the zip and the whip of his passes versus everyone else on that court. Right. And that seems really simple. And it was just a driving kick finishing drill. But I wasn't the only one. The Dartmouth staff also noticed like that kid's got some feel to his game because he's not floating passes. It's sharp, it's quick. So there are things that are actionable in terms of stations, in terms of when you set the tone right at the beginning of camp, you are going to catch coach's attention. Now you got to build on that in the games, right? So again, with the intentionality that I just talked about, like how are you running the floor? How are you cutting to the back? Like, are you cutting to score, or are you cutting because that's just what your coach, who you've known for 15 minutes, told you is the offense today, right? How are you hitting and then going for boards? Are you kind of like forearm half checking out a guy, or are you going to hit him with a forearm shiver, getting your butt on him, and then going to get the rebound? And then there is a piece with all of this, is with these camps, especially because I know some of you guys are going to be in multiple coming up in the next few weeks. There's a line between being selfish and being assertive, right? Because in these camps, everyone is trying to showcase what they can do. Everyone's trying to get that note from that coach of, okay, that kid can play. So everyone's getting their shot. If you don't look for your shot and you just make the right play every time, you will not get noticed, right? So there is a line of finding times to shoot when you might not for Riverside, or you might not for your high school team, because it's maybe a B or a B minus shot rather than an A minus or A plus. In these camps, there's a fine line you have to navigate in terms of, if you don't show that you have any assertiveness or confidence, then it's very easy to get overlooked.
Hey, Coach, I have a
Thank you.
question.
Go ahead, Silas.
At Riverside, we talk a lot about culture, and I was just curious what that means to you on and off the court.
Yeah. I will not talk too long about this because we could do an hour on this, right? But everything that goes in our culture comes back to those three pillars that I mentioned earlier, right? So practice integrity, value relationships, embrace sacrifice. And then there's our our standard for everything is excellence with spirit, right? So we have these three pillars. So like anytime there's a question about how we should operate, it's like, are we doing the right thing? Are we practicing integrity, whether someone's looking or not, right? Are we valuing relationships? Are we being a good teammate to our guys next to us? Or are we being like in what we call external versus internal? Are we being internal? Are we only caring about ourselves? Are we not talking because I'm tired? And then embrace sacrifice. Like, are you going to cut really hard even though you don't get the shot because it opens up your teammate? Are you going to sprint the floor because it opens up a driving lane for your point guard? Or are you going to jog and look at the ball the whole time because you're waiting for your shot? Right. So everything goes back to those three things. Right. But the other thing is, standards are really high here. Right. So I'll start with the first standard we teach in practice. We talk about pocket, right? If you need to hit a guy in the pocket when you pass the ball, if you don't hit a guy in the pocket, that guy who is receiving the pass, whether he's a freshman or a senior, is going to yell at that guy, pocket, right? Like that's a standard that like is non-negotiable for us. Is that's something that our freshmen know as soon as they get here. Now, every other guy has different standards they're going to be able to hold guys accountable to because they've been here for a different amount of time. But the reality is, are you able to know the standards in your program, whether it's Riverside or the program that you're eventually going to go to? If you know the standards that Riverside has and your teammate doesn't meet those standards, are you going to just kind of turn the cheek and let it slide, or are you going to call him out? Right? Because the reality is, like in our program, calling him out is being a good teammate. It's not being a jerk. We want guys who are going to make sure their teammates are doing what is expected of them within the program.
Thank you.
It's a good question, Silas. Caleb, you're up.
I have a question about just kind of academics and like you being a player in the program and also coaching the program. How best would you advise guys being able to balance like the rigorous academics at the school, but also being able to like play basketball at a high level?
Yeah. So again, one of the big benefits of being here is that you don't have to sacrifice one or the other. Now, the reality is what we tell everyone, you're coming in here with two top priorities, right? The priorities for every guy here are basketball and academics. It doesn't mean they're not going to have time to play Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever it is that everyone's playing now, right? It doesn't mean you're not going to have time to watch the NBA playoffs. It just means that when you are structuring your day, you have to be intentional. I keep on using that word. You have to be intentional about how you're utilizing your time, right? Because all of you are going to get to college and have a lot more free time on your hands, right? Like the classes are going to decrease, the class time is going to decrease, but how you're using the time outside of your class is really important, right? So a lot of that is getting the right guys who have the right mentality, which is you have a really high work ethic and you're good with time management. It means you're going to be good here. And then when you get hooked up with 15 other guys who are also good about that, it's not going to be just you who's studying on a Thursday or Friday night because you have a test the next day or on Monday, right? It's not going to be, you're not going to be the only guy who's trying to knock out a paper because there's other guys around you who will also know like there's times we need to study, there's times we're going to shoot, right? So that's where our guys are very intentional about. The good thing is our gym is just for us, right? So our gym is not for the general campus. So what that means is when our guys have 90 minutes, 2 hour windows within their day, they are able to come down to the gym and get shots up. They're going to be able to get on the gun, right? So that's where you have some flexibility in terms of your schedule here is you don't have to sacrifice on that class time or that time to meet with a professor and feel like you're not going to be able to get shots up or not going to be able to get an extra lift if that's what you need to do as a freshman, right? So it still means you have to be intentional or strategic about how you're doing your day. But as long as you are intentional with those things, you're going to be able to get it done. It is going to be a challenge, right? The reality is if you handle the challenge the right way, what it becomes is across 4 years, it just becomes your default operating system, right? And the reality is when you graduate, you're going to find that literally whatever profession or career you choose, it's not going to feel easy, but it's going to feel like you're going to be able to handle it, right? You're going to be able to do very well there because you just did it as your operating system for 4 years.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, I guess like I was just thinking like, what does a normal like day look like for a college athlete like at your school versus like in season and like off season, I guess.
Yeah, let's go off season first, right? So D3, no coaches practices. We get 8 flex days before the season starts. So let's say most of you when you get to college, you're gonna have 3 days probably that are heavy on classes. Right? Let's say you're a STEM kid. That means here your Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, you might have heavy course time. But that might mean your Tuesday, Thursdays are light, right? So if your Tuesday, Thursdays are light, that might mean you go to class, but then you have an hour and a half before lunch. You come down and get a lift session in, or you come get a shot session in. And then you go to lunch, then you go to the library, you knock out whatever studying papers you need to do. And then our team is organizing, whether it's 3 team lifts a week and it's 3 open gyms a week. And then everything else is guys doing stuff on their own, right? So that might be a 4:15 lift with the strength coach, or it might be a 7:30 open gym after volleyball is done, right? So in season, similar, obviously we're structuring that time more heavily, right? And we are really intentional or conscientious that our guys' time is limited here, right? So when we practice, our practices are down to the 30 second to the minute, right? Because we are conscience that like our guys have other priorities here as well, not just basketball. So when we go to film, we're gonna watch 20 to 25 minutes of film, and we're gonna get you guys as much film as we can possibly fit into that 25 minutes. When we get on the court, like we don't waste a lot of time talking. Freshmen, their heads spin for the first 2 weeks. It is a boiling pot. But the reality is, once you do it, you figure it out quicker, and then we get a lot more done in those 2 hours because we're not wasting time walking or talking very much. And then you might be able to, we're going to lift twice a week in season, and then, not lift Tuesdays, Fridays before games. So overall, like it's rigorous in terms of you might be going pretty hard from 8 to 8, right? And then you got to get your stuff done so that you can get to sleep at a decent hour, and you're not going to bed at 1 a.m. and then having to get up and do it all again. Right. So it's, and again, like I went here, I still had time. FIFA was the game in my day. Okay. I still have plenty of time to play FIFA, which I don't think is even, that's not even a game anymore. So it's like EA football or I don't know, soccer, whatever. So I still had time to play video games. I still had time to hang out on a Saturday, but it was also, I had to get my stuff done each day to make sure I had those opportunities to socialize or to hang out.
Hey, Coach, I have another question.
Fire, Silas.
I, funnily enough, met one of your players, Jack, today, and he talked about how intense practices were, and how you guys were competitive but also connected at the same time. How do you build that type of environment at Swarthmore?
That's good. That's a really good question. Glad you met Jack. It goes back to what I brought up earlier in terms of our guys understand that when they call each other out on not doing something how they're supposed to, they don't take it as this guy hates me and hates my guts. It's they understand that I didn't do something that I know I should have done, my teammate knows I should have done, and my coach knows I should have done. And he's making me better. Like he's being a good teammate because he's making me better. Right. It doesn't mean that like 1 out of 10 of those iterations are a little contentious, right? Like our guys are okay with conflict. That's part of the being in the program. But the reality is it's understanding that holding guys to a standard that is a known standard within a drill, within a live session of practice, or within a game, it's not only like accepted in our program, it's encouraged, right? So freshmen don't feel like they're being attacked when they get those kind of that kind of feedback. So and then it goes back to like we don't give them a lot of time to think in practice. Like we are throwing them in the fire and they have to figure it out quickly. And if they don't figure it out, all right, you get them back in the line. You got to watch the next guy in front of you. You got to do it better. Right. So a lot of it is you don't really get a lot of time to feel bad for yourself, or you don't really get a lot of time to like think internally during practice because you're just trying to make sure you're doing that drill right. You're trying to make sure you're doing that section of practice right.
Coach, if you see the chat, Will said he couldn't speak up, but he had a question in the chat.
Not to talk. Okay. Recruited jerk, but you're looking for someone that is loud. That's a good paradox. Yep. What is at camps with a new team? Really good question, Will. There's you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but like there's not a dictionary on bringing energy to a team, right? Like it's not something you have to learn how to like dap a guy up if he hits a shot, like point at a good pass, uh, or just like bring energy on a good play. Like that's how you bring energy in a camp when you don't know the guys around you. The other piece is like as you're playing throughout the day, try and know the guys on your team's names. Like that's something because you need to talk to them when you're playing, like on a switch or on a hey, I'm open next one, right? Like those are the things that you guys might say in your program. I don't know if you say next one or one more, right? Like the verbals that within Riverside, you can always use in camp, like if they are known for other players. But also it's how do you bring energy without knowing people's names? You bring energy. Like, are you providing energy to the group? Are you providing energy to the team? Or are you just kind of out there? And like, to your guys' credit and to Coach Kuba's credit, like, you guys as an AAU team, when you're playing, do bring good energy. You do bring good um, uh, enthusiasm, right? So it doesn't mean because you're not with your teammates that you can't do that as an individual.
Which is something that probably stands out because AAU, I think it's a little bit of a tougher dynamic for these guys sometimes because it is a little bit of that camp where you're coming in with a bunch of guys from a bunch of different schools. You only see each other a couple times, and then you got to go out there and do the right thing. So credit to these guys for bringing energy and enthusiasm when we go out there.
Yeah, and that's the reality, guys. Like, I think you all understand is how competitive the admissions process is, right? And then you guys are layering on top of that how competitive the basketball piece is. Because not only are you competing for an admission slot, you're competing for a roster spot. So you have two things that are competing against each other. So when you look out across like every team you guys have played this spring or every camper you guys have played around this summer, there are a lot of good shooters. There are a lot of good ball handlers. There are a lot of good defenders. There are a lot of good bigs. So how do you separate yourself aside from the skill set you bring? The things that you can control, right? Going back to one of the earlier questions in the Zoom, it's how are you bringing energy and intentionality to the station to start the day? And then how are you being intentional and energetic when you play throughout the camp or in an AU environment? Because the reality is like, it might not feel cool or might not seem cool in the moment to like be the one guy who's talking on your team, but every single coach notices it, right? Like every single coach notices that stuff. Whether they how high a premium they put on it, that depends on the coach, but every coach values it.
I have a question. How many of your players play all 4 years at Swarthmore?
90 something percent.
Do you get many mid-year transfers or anything?
We've gotten one transfer in the past 13 years, and he was a walk-on after the fact, after he already got admitted, right? So that's the one thing with Swarthmore. We're a little different than NYU, okay, or some other schools. Like we don't have a grad school. We don't have grad transfers. The transfer process is even more difficult than the application process for an underclassman. So with that, we naturally kind of build our team through freshmen. Generally, we play 2 freshmen a year in the top 10 because we don't have another way to do it. But in terms of the graduation, we've never had a guy not graduate. That's one thing. The retention rate for the team, we have about the same attrition that every other school does, which is once every 2 to 3 years, a guy figures out after doing it that basketball, which he thought might have been his first or second love, is actually his fifth or sixth love. And maybe he gets really into learning a fifth language, or he gets asked by one of his classmates to co-found a business, which, by the way, has happened. That those are two real stories for guys who've quit the team. Like so. It's not generally a basketball is this stinks or I'm not playing. It's more I like basketball, but I like a lot of these other things more, and this is where my career is going to take me.
Yeah, one more. Anyone got one more before we send Coach on his way?
Got a lot of good questions.
If we're thinking one more, I mean, one that could tangibly benefit these guys. You want to a little bit like where you're going to be in June, July, or where these.
Yeah. Forget the question. I'll just talk about what else is actionable for you guys, right? So, the reality is where we'll be. So we'll be at Columbia and Lafayette this weekend. We might be pivoting to Navy Saturday morning. That's TBD. We got to figure out more about that. So our camp schedule is always a little bit based on the moment of where we know guys are going to be. but we will be at Columbia this weekend. We will be at Lafayette. In August, that first week of August, we will be at Brown, Columbia, Dartmouth, Yale, maybe UPenn. So we will be at Columbia. We'll also be at Babson both days. We will be at Hoop Group Atlantic City. We will probably be at the Hoop Group Summer Jam Fest, I think. That's about it. In terms of the live Scholastic period, I don't know if we're going to get up to New York, but that's a possibility. So I think we're going to have chances to see everyone here more. The reality is, whether it's Swarthmore or whether it's another school, push is starting to come to shove for you guys, right? It's not getting there yet, but I think the reality is you guys have played in front of coaches enough to start to gauge what that level of interest is, right? And if it's not what you want it to be, you need to do your best to reach out, and this part for all of you guys to understand, it doesn't always have to be you to reach out, but it also can't always be other people, right? So Coach Kuba is a resource. Your high school coaches are a resource. Your trainer might be a resource. Like, figuring out who can reach out on your behalf to gauge where the interest stands if you personally can't get it from the coach yourself, right? Because that's part of this process. Is we're getting to mid-June now. It's not that you have to know what schools you're interested in and vice versa, but you want to start putting that picture together. Because once we get to mid-July and that AAU period ends, you better hope that you have a clear list of, here are the schools that are interested in me. Here's the list of schools that I'm interested in. Where do we find the alignment? So I think that's where, in terms of trying to figure those things out, this is good. This is a good step. Learning more about Swarthmore, learning what it's going to take, and then hopefully following up with, where do I stand and what else can I show to make an impact for this team potentially. But also trying to do that with every other coach of every program that you guys are interested in. Again, whether it's you or your coaches, trying to make sure that someone is reaching out to figure out, because again, these admission slots, there's not a lot of them. Roster spots, there's even fewer. It's competitive. It's tough. You guys know that, but you got to take some ownership of it.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate it, Coach. We're right on time, just like practice. So no, we really thank you, and I know everyone in here has got some interest in Swarthmore and interest in being recruited at that level. So we appreciate all the insight on the school and on the process. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely, guys. It was a pleasure. And hey, good luck in July if I don't see any of you at Columbia beforehand. Okay.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Coach.
Thank
See
you,
you.
Coach.
Thank you, Coach.